The one feeling that changes everything for an avoidant is emotional safety without pressure. And I want you to sit with that because it sounds simple, but it explains almost everything you've lived through with them. It explains why they can be warm one day and distant the next. It explains why the moment you ask for clarity, they suddenly feel overwhelmed. It explains why you can love them deeply and still feel like you're losing them anyway. Because for an avoidant, the question is rarely, do I like this person? The deeper question is, can I breathe in this connection? And if you've been the anxious one, you know the pain of that. You weren't trying to control them. You were trying to feel secure. You weren't trying to trap them. You were trying to build something real. But your nervous system reads their distance like danger. So you lean in, you ask, you reach, you explain, you try to fix. And the more you try to fix, the more they feel pressure. And the more they feel pressure, the more they back away. Then you feel abandoned, and you try harder, and they retreat more. It becomes a loop that feels like love, but behaves like anxiety. So when I say emotional safety without pressure, I'm not asking you to become cold. I'm not asking you to pretend you don't care. I'm asking you to become steady. Because steadiness is what tells an avoidant, you can come close and you won't be swallowed. Steadiness is what tells them, this isn't a trap. Steadiness is what tells them, you're safe here. And safe does not mean you accept anything. Safe means you don't turn closeness into panic, and you don't turn space into punishment. Safe means you can love without grabbing. Because the avoidant nervous system is trained to equate closeness with loss of freedom. Many avoidants learned early that love came with strings, expectations, criticism, pressure, or emotional chaos. So now, even as adults, their body reacts to intimacy like it's a threat, not because you're threatening, but because intimacy wakes up an old memory in them, the memory that closeness equals obligation. Closeness equals losing yourself. Closeness equals being controlled. Closeness equals being responsible for someone else's emotions. That's why they often shut down when you need reassurance. Not because reassurance is wrong, but because they interpret your need as a demand. They might fail. They don't hear, I want to feel closer. They hear, I'm about to be trapped. They don't hear, I care about you. They hear, I'm going to lose my peace. And when someone hears love as pressure, they start protecting themselves from love. This is where you have to stop trying to force intimacy, because forced intimacy is pressure. Long emotional speeches, repeated questions, demanding answers right now, chasing them when they withdraw. All of that might be your attempt to create closeness, but to them, it feels like a wall closing in. And it's heartbreaking because you're trying to build and they're trying to escape. You're trying to connect and they're trying to regulate their anxiety by creating space. So what changes everything is when they experience you as calm, not because you don't care, but because you have a center. You can express a need without panic. You can say what you want without begging. You can hold a boundary without a threat. You can tolerate a little space without falling apart. That calm is medicine to an avoidant's nervous system because it teaches them closeness doesn't have to be chaotic. Emotional safety without pressure looks like this. It looks like you not turning every delayed reply into a crisis. It looks like you not chasing them with 5 messages when they pull away. It looks like you giving them room to come closer without punishing them for being slow. It looks like you being honest, but not demanding. It looks like you saying, I care about you, and I also need consistency, in a steady voice, not in a desperate one. It looks like you being able to walk away from disrespect without trying to win the conversation. And this is the part that is so difficult for an anxious heart, because your instinct is to secure. Your instinct is to reach. Your instinct is to close the gap fast, so you can breathe again. But what you have to learn is that your breathing cannot depend on someone else's response time. Your peace cannot depend on whether they're in a warm mood today. Because when you hand them that power, you become pressure without meaning to. You start chasing relief, not connection. So your job is to regulate yourself first, not to please them, but to protect you. To remind your nervous system, I am safe even if they take space. To remind your heart, I don't have to beg to be chosen. To remind your mind, if someone wants me, they will show up with effort. And when you start living from that place, the energy you bring becomes different. It becomes lighter. It becomes steadier. It becomes less consuming. That steadiness creates emotional safety, because the avoidant starts associating you with calm instead of pressure. They start associating your closeness with peace instead of obligation. They start feeling like they can come toward you and still keep their dignity, their freedom, their sense of self. And for an avoidant, that is rare. But let me say this clearly. Emotional safety without pressure does not mean you have no needs. It doesn't mean you tolerate inconsistency forever. It doesn't mean you accept breadcrumbing. It doesn't mean you wait around. It means you stop trying to control the outcome with anxiety. You stop trying to force them into intimacy through emotional urgency. You let your standards do the talking. Because paradoxically, the moment you stop pressuring, you become more powerful. The moment you stop chasing, you become more attractive. Not because games work, but because calm is magnetic. Calm is mature. Calm says, I want love, but I won't lose myself to get it. And that energy makes an avoidant curious because they're used to either being chased or being ignored. They're not used to being met by someone who cares and is still steady. And when an avoidant feels safe enough to come closer, that's when attachment can form. Not attachment from panic, not attachment from jealousy, not attachment from control, real attachment. The kind that grows slowly, the kind that builds trust, the kind that feels like two people choosing each other, not one person chasing and the other running. So if you want to create the one feeling that changes everything, you become the calm place. You become the person who can offer warmth without grabbing, closeness without control, love without pressure. You become the person whose presence says, you can breathe here. And if they're capable of growth, that feeling will soften them. It will invite them. It will make them want to stay. And if they're not capable, that same steadiness will still save you. Because you will no longer be the person who loses themselves trying to keep someone close. You will be the person who protects their peace, who speaks clearly, who loves deeply, and who never again mistakes anxiety for intimacy. They attach when they feel seen and accepted, not judged, fixed, or chased. And this is where most people accidentally lose them, because they think love is persuasion. They think love is explaining harder, proving more, pushing through the wall until the wall finally opens. But an avoidant doesn't attach because you convince them. They attach because their nervous system relaxes enough to let you in. And that relaxation comes from a very specific experience, the experience of being understood without being cornered. Think about what an avoidant is used to. They are used to people wanting something from them quickly. They are used to emotional urgency. They are used to, where is this going? What are we? Why aren't you texting? Why are you like this? They are used to being treated like a problem to solve. And even if you are asking those questions because you're hurting, even if you're asking those questions because you want clarity, their body hears criticism. Their body hears judgment. Their body hears, you're failing. And when they feel like they're failing, they don't step closer. they shut down. So the feeling that attaches them is not being chased, it's being seen. Not seen in a superficial way, not seen like, I know your favorite food, but seen like, I recognize your patterns, and I'm not here to punish you for them. Seen like, I can tell when you get overwhelmed, and I don't need to turn that into a fight. Seen like, I can love you without trying to control you. That kind of seeing is rare because it's mature. It requires emotional steadiness. It requires you to be able to hold your own feelings without making them the enemy. And acceptance is the next layer. Acceptance is not approval. Acceptance is not you tolerating disrespect. Acceptance is not you becoming small. Acceptance is you not making them wrong for being human. You can accept that they get overwhelmed and still require consistency. You can accept that they need space sometimes and still require communication. You can accept their fear and still protect your heart. But the tone matters. Because when you communicate from accusation, you trigger defense. When you communicate from clarity, you invite connection. This is why fixing doesn't work. Fixing sounds like love to an anxious heart, because fixing feels like effort. Fixing feels like I'm trying. But to an avoidant, fixing often feels like judgment in disguise. It feels like, you are broken and I am here to repair you. It feels like being analyzed. It feels like being managed. And even if you're right, even if you can see the pattern clearly, they don't attach to being corrected. They attach to being safe. That's why the way you hold them matters more than the words you say. You could say the perfect thing, but if your energy is frantic, your tone is sharp, your intention is to pull them closer by force, they will feel it. They might not be able to name it, but they will feel it. And they will retreat. Because avoidants attach when they feel they can come close without being judged. Now let's talk about the chasing part, because this is where your heart aches. When you chase, you're not chasing because you're weak. You're chasing because you're scared. You're chasing because you've tasted closeness with them, and then they disappeared, and your nervous system went into alarm. And the alarm says, fix it now, or you will lose them. So you send the message, you call, you explain, you ask for reassurance, you try to get them to tell you you matter. And in the moment, it feels like love. It feels like you're fighting for something. But chasing does one dangerous thing. It teaches them that they don't have to come toward you. You will always come toward them. And that removes the need for them to grow. It removes the need for them to face their own fear. It removes the need for them to build emotional courage, because your chasing does the emotional work. And when you stop chasing, you finally give them the chance to choose you freely. To choose closeness without pressure. To choose connection because they want it, not because they're being pulled into it by your anxiety. So how do you create that seen and accepted feeling without betraying yourself? You start with your own center. You stop treating their distance like an emergency. You stop turning every mood into a crisis. You breathe before you speak. You choose words that reflect your standards, not your panic. You say things like, I enjoy you and I want consistency, instead of, why are you doing this? You say, I respect that you need space and I need communication, instead of, you never care. You say, I'm not interested in hot and cold, instead of begging them to be warm. Because the difference between maturity and desperation is this. Maturity doesn't plead. Maturity doesn't chase. Maturity invites and observes. Maturity says, this is what I want, and this is what I will not accept. And that energy creates safety, because it's stable. It's not volatile. It's not needy. It's not controlling. It's clear. And here's the emotional truth. The avoidant often doesn't feel safe being fully themselves with people because they fear being swallowed, criticized, trapped, or demanded from. So when you are the person who can hold your feelings and still be kind, who can set a boundary and still be warm, who can say no without punishment, who can say yes without clinging, you become a new experience for them. You become the person who doesn't make them wrong for having fear, but also doesn't make yourself wrong for having needs. That balance is what attaches them. But I have to say this because it protects you. The goal is not to become a therapist for an avoidant. The goal is not to mother them into maturity. The goal is not to accept crumbs and call it healing. The goal is to create a relationship where both people feel safe, where you feel safe too, where your nervous system is not constantly in survival mode, where you are not always guessing, where you are not always overthinking. So if you offer them being seen and accepted, and they respond by taking more and giving less, then that is not attachment. That is comfort. Comfort for them, pain for you. But if you offer that, and they respond by stepping closer, communicating more, showing consistent effort, taking accountability, then you are witnessing something real. Because real attachment shows up as behavior, not just emotion. This is why your love must be paired with standards. Because the safest thing you can be is not endlessly patient, it's calmly self-respecting. It's saying, I can understand you, and I still require effort. It's saying, I can accept you, and I won't abandon myself. It's saying, I can love you, but I will not chase you. And when an avoidant feels that, truly feels that, they don't feel trapped. They feel free, because they realize closeness with you doesn't come with chaos. It comes with calm, and calm is the feeling they don't forget. Calm is the feeling that can turn fear into trust, and trust into something that finally lasts. The bond becomes real when you offer consistency plus freedom, closeness without control. And this is where most people misunderstand what attachment actually is. They think attachment is obsession, constant texting, constant reassurance, constant proximity. They think if the avoidant is always chasing, always needy, always afraid to lose you, then it must mean love is finally real. But that kind of intensity often creates a bond built on fear, not safety. And fear might hold someone for a moment, but it rarely holds a relationship for a lifetime. For an avoidant, the deepest attachment grows in a paradox. They attach when they feel they can choose you without losing themselves. They attach when closeness feels like warmth, not obligation. They attach when intimacy feels like home, not a cage. And you create that not by disappearing to make them chase, not by playing games, not by punishing them with silence, but by offering something that is both stable and spacious at the same time. Consistency is the stable part. It's the feeling that you mean what you say, that your care doesn't come in random bursts, that your affection is not a reward, and your distance is not a weapon. Consistency is you showing up the same way, not perfect, but reliable. It's the way you communicate with calm. It's the way you keep your word. It's the way you don't make them guess who you are today. And this is huge for an avoidant, because many avoidants grew up in emotional unpredictability, where love could be conditional, moody, chaotic, or transactional. So when they meet someone whose energy is steady, their body starts learning a new language. But freedom is the spacious part. Freedom is what keeps their nervous system from panicking. Freedom is the sense that you have a life, a center, a full identity, and you are not asking them to become your entire world. Freedom is the feeling that if they need a moment to breathe, you don't punish them. That if they need space, you don't turn it into a war. Freedom is the permission to be human without being controlled. And here is the emotional truth. Most anxious hearts hear freedom, and they translate it as danger. They think freedom means abandonment. They think freedom means they don't care. They think if you give too much space, you'll be forgotten. So they cling, they over-message, they over-explain. They try to secure the bond with intensity, because intensity feels like insurance. But intensity, for an avoidant, often feels like pressure. And pressure triggers their escape instinct. So the bond becomes real when you do something incredibly brave. You stop trying to force closeness through fear. You stop trying to secure them through panic. You start securing yourself through steadiness. You offer love without grabbing. You offer presence without possession. You offer closeness without control. This is what closeness without control looks like. It looks like you being warm, but not frantic. It looks like you being interested, but not obsessive. It looks like you saying, "I like you, I care about you," while still keeping your life moving. It looks like you having your routines, your friendships, your goals, your self-respect, so your nervous system isn't hanging on their mood. It looks like you not turning their slower pace into a personal insult. It looks like you not trying to extract commitment through emotional pressure. Instead, you let time reveal character. You let consistency reveal readiness. And this is where your standards become the backbone of your softness. Because closeness without control does not mean closeness without boundaries. It doesn't mean you accept hot and cold forever. It doesn't mean you tolerate breadcrumbing. It doesn't mean you become endlessly patient while your heart is starving. It means you set standards that are calm and clear, standards that do not threaten, but do not bend either. You can say, "I respect your space, and I also need communication." That's freedom plus consistency. You can say, "I care about you, and I'm not interested in confusing dynamics." That's closeness without control. You can say, "I want something real, and I'm not going to chase someone into it." That's love with dignity. And when you show up like that, something shifts in an avoidant. Because they are used to two extremes. The person who doesn't care at all, which feels safe but empty. And the person who cares so much, they become anxious and controlling, which feels intense but threatening. When you become the third option, the person who cares deeply but stays grounded, you become a new experience. You become the kind of love that doesn't demand, but also doesn't beg. And that is what can change an avoidant's internal wiring over time. They start associating you with peace. They start associating you with safety. They start associating your presence with relief, not pressure. And once an avoidant associates you with relief, they begin to come closer on their own, because closeness stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like a reward. Not a reward you give them for good behavior, a reward their nervous system experiences in your calm. But here's the part that will protect you. You cannot confuse them coming closer with the relationship being safe immediately. Attachment can begin, but trust must be built. So you don't rush. You don't hand them your whole heart the moment they show warmth. You keep the pace steady. You let them earn deeper access through consistent effort. Because closeness without control also means you don't control the outcome by giving too much too soon. You allow the relationship to reveal whether it can hold you without breaking you. And if you're wondering how this becomes attached for life, it's because over time, the body learns. The avoidance body learns that intimacy doesn't have to equal panic, that closeness doesn't have to equal suffocation, that love doesn't have to equal pressure. And your consistency teaches that lesson, while your freedom keeps the nervous system from rebelling against it. So yes, the bond becomes real when you offer consistency plus freedom, when you are stable but not consuming, when you are loving but not controlling, when you are present but not desperate, when you are warm but not self-abandoning. And the moment you master that balance, whether the avoidant stays or not, you win, because you stop building relationships that require you to lose yourself. You stop chasing people into intimacy. You start creating love that can breathe. And that is the kind of connection that lasts, not because someone is trapped, not because someone is afraid, not because someone is obsessed, but because both people feel safe enough to choose each other again and again, with calm hearts, with clear standards, with steady effort, with the quiet feeling that says, I can breathe here and I want to stay. Your power is your standards and calm, because security is what makes them stay, not intensity. And I need you to really hear that, because so many people break their own hearts, trying to create attachment through emotional fireworks. They think if they can be irresistible enough, mysterious enough, available enough, unavailable enough, dramatic enough, sweet enough, then the avoidant will finally lock in. But an avoidant doesn't stay because you feel like a rush. They stay when you feel like peace. Intensity can get their attention. Calm can get their commitment. Because intensity triggers their nervous system in two ways. At first, it can feel exciting, it can feel magnetic, it can even feel addictive. But then it starts feeling like pressure, like expectation, like I'm going to be responsible for someone's emotions. And that is the exact feeling they have been running from their whole life. So if you build the connection on intensity, you might get closeness for a moment, but you also create the conditions for distance later. That's the roller coaster. High highs, then the retreat, then you panic, then they shut down, then you chase, then they pull away, and you end up calling chaos chemistry. But your calm changes the entire equation. Calm is not boring. Calm is regulated. Calm is safe. Calm is the energy that says, I can love you without grabbing you. Calm is the energy that says, I can miss you without collapsing. Calm is the energy that says, I care and I'm still okay. And that is a rare experience for an avoidant, because many avoidants learned early that closeness comes with emotional overwhelm, with drama, with criticism, with demands. So when they meet someone who is calm, they feel something they don't know how to explain: relief. Relief is what makes them stay. But calm without standards becomes self-abandonment, and standards without calm becomes control. You need both. You need the softness that makes them feel safe, and the standards that make them respect you. Because respect is the foundation of long-term attachment. Someone can desire you without respecting you. Someone can miss you without respecting you. Someone can chase you when they're afraid of losing you, and still not respect your heart when they feel secure again. So your standards are the part of you that says, if you want to stay in my life, this must be healthy. Standards are not threats. Standards are not ultimatums. Standards are the quiet rules you live by to protect your peace. Standards are the line that says, I will not accept hot and cold. Standards are the line that says, I won't be punished with silence. Standards are the line that says, I won't be kept in confusion. Standards are the line that says, if you care, show it consistently. And the most powerful part is, you don't have to shout standards. You embody them. You follow through. You stop negotiating with people who keep pushing the line. This is where your calm becomes lethal, in the best way. Calm means you don't react to mixed signals like they're emergencies. Calm means you don't send 10 messages to get one response. Calm means you don't beg for reassurance. Calm means you don't try to prove your worth with performance. Calm means You don't chase someone who keeps running. And when you live like that, you remove the reward for inconsistency, because inconsistency feeds on your reactions. It feeds on your anxiety. It feeds on your willingness to overgive. When you stop reacting, the pattern loses its power. They can't pull you with distance anymore. They can't control the emotional temperature of the connection by going cold. They can't keep you hooked with breadcrumbs. Your calm makes you unhookable. And this is what makes an avoidant attach, not because you trapped them, but because you created a new experience. You created a relationship where closeness doesn't feel like chaos and distance doesn't give them power. You created a dynamic where they can approach you without fear, but they can't disrespect you without consequence. That balance is everything. Now, let's talk about what standards look like in real life, not in theory. Standards look like you being clear about what you want early without pressure. Not, promise me forever, but I want something consistent. Standards look like you noticing patterns instead of ignoring them. Standards look like you not excusing poor behavior with empathy. Yes, empathy matters, but empathy without boundaries becomes self-harm. Standards look like you not accepting half love because you're afraid of losing them. Standards look like you saying, I care about you and I'm not available for this dynamic, and then actually meaning it. And your calm is what allows you to hold those standards without turning into a fight. Calm is you speaking slowly. Calm is you not arguing for your worth. Calm is you not trying to convince them to treat you well. Calm is you letting silence be information. Calm is you trusting actions over words. Calm is you walking away from confusion without needing a villain. Calm is you choosing peace even when your heart wants to chase. Because here's the truth. The avoidant often expects you to explode or beg. They expect emotion to be messy. They expect boundaries to come with drama. They expect you to either cling or punish. So when you can say, I like you and I need consistency, in a calm voice, it disarms them. When you can step back without insults, it disarms them. When you can hold your ground without cruelty, it disarms them. And disarming is not manipulation. It's stability. Stability is what teaches their nervous system that closeness is safe. But your calm also protects you from being addicted to the chase. Because the anxious heart can become addicted to relief. It can become addicted to the highs of reconciliation. It can confuse intensity with intimacy. Your calm breaks that addiction. You stop needing the roller coaster to feel alive. You stop needing their attention to feel okay. You become steady, and that steadiness is attractive to anyone who is ready for real love, including an avoidant who is willing to grow. And if they are not willing to grow, your calm will still save you. Because you won't spend months trying to earn crumbs. You won't spend nights staring at the ceiling, wondering what you did wrong. You won't keep shrinking your needs to stay connected. Your standards will protect your future. So if you want to create a bond that lasts, you don't aim for obsession, you aim for security. You don't aim for chaos, you aim for calm. You don't aim for making them afraid to lose you. You aim for making them respect you enough to keep you. And the way you do that is by becoming the kind of person whose love is warm but not desperate, whose boundaries are firm but not cruel, whose presence feels like peace, and whose standards make it clear that your heart is not a playground. It is a home, and only someone who can treat it with care gets to live there.